air it out. Down the field. Catch and a touchdown.
It's College Football Pick'em, presented by Harbor Jiu Jitsu on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio. Here's your host, Nick Kosko.
Welcome inside the College Football Pick'em right here on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio, presented by Harbor Jiu Jitsu. I'm your host, Nick Kosko. We have another great week of college football coming up today, folks. And I'll tell you what, on my picks, 19-2 on the season. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? We are back to 500. Boy, it was a long and steady climb, folks, but we are finally back to normal in terms of our picks. Remember at one point we were 6-12-2. That was pretty bad. 10-13-2, 12-16-2. Just couldn't get over the hump. 15-18-2 last week, and then coming into this week, 19-19-2. We are back, folks. Great. Money has been won. Back to breaking even, and now we move forward looking to win money and get back into the green as we move forward in this college football season. A lot to get into today, a lot of postponements within college football, including the SEC, top 15 team Coastal Carolina not playing as well. And just so we know, for you folks out there, that game was postponed yesterday, so we had to change one of our picks. So we're going to take a look at the TCU West Virginia game instead. We also have to take a look at the rest of the docket, which will include my alma mater as well. So we'll look at that a little bit later. But basically the big theme of the week is, other than the postponements, I mean, there's really not too much going on in terms of these monumental matchups. I mean, we saw what happened last week when Notre Dame knocked off Clemson. DJ Uiagalelei, he stepped in for Trevor Lawrence. Lawrence is going to be back, and Notre Dame takes on Boston College today at 3:30. This could be the Phil Jurkovec revenge game for Boston College, the former Notre Dame quarterback who transferred to play for the Eagles. They're at 3:30 today. Some of the other ranked matchups. There's really not much going on in terms of, as I mentioned before, these huge, hotly contested matchups. It's kind of one of those middle-of-the-road weeks within the top 25. I mean, Clemson is off this week, and Lawrence is going to be back for their next game. So, now this is at the point where Clemson has to make up some ground a little bit. Now, again, they already had the loss. So what does that mean moving forward for the college football playoff? Well, it really just means is that as long as they went out and win the ACC, they're going to go to the college football playoff. And then it's up to the committee to say, all right, Notre Dame, you have one loss. Let's just say hypothetically, what do we do with you? Well, that's going to depend on the Big Ten. It's going to depend on the Pac-12, and it's going to depend on the SEC, because you could easily have Alabama go undefeated, or even go undefeated and lose to Florida, so to speak, in the SEC championship game, and they have to make the argument, all right, if you're going to put in two teams from a conference, are you doing it from the ACC or are you doing it from the SEC this year? You might have to lean towards Clemson Notre Dame just because the two teams split, and they've been top four for most of the year anyway, but Florida making a late push now. And then you can't forget about the Big Ten, because Ohio State is off this week. They had a canceled game against Maryland. Of course, any canceled Big Ten games do not get made up. So that's very unfortunate for the Ohio State Buckeyes, who were absolutely rolling through 3 games. And I was really intrigued to see what was going to happen in this road matchup against Maryland, because Maryland 2-1 on the season. They opened up with a horrendous loss to Northwestern, 43-3. Northwestern, by the way, 3-0, but they're leading the Big Ten West. But then they edged out Minnesota by a point, 45-44. Then they handled Penn State, 35-19. And Taulia Tagovailoa is the quarterback, by the way. Yes, Tua's younger brother, who transferred to Maryland, and he's been a star the last 2 weeks. So it's a shame we're not going to see that game. That was a very intriguing East Division matchup. But we'll stay in the East, of course, though, the Big Ten East, with Rutgers a little bit later, because I know you folks love Rutgers. But in any event, the biggest things that happened last week were Notre Dame knocking off Clemson, and then the Jim Harbaugh conversation just seems to never go away, because they lost again last week to Indiana. And I regret to inform you that was our lone loss last week, folks. Yes, we were 4-1 last week, and we had Michigan minus 3.5 on the road against Indiana. And guess what? Michigan lost outright. So A shame. And now we don't know what the deal is with Jim Harbaugh. Is he going to survive the season? I think he will. He will survive the season. And, of course, I had to eat my crow a little bit with Rich Quinones on Back Your Play on Wednesday, right on this very station. I'll tell you what. He's still trying to get me to admit that Harbaugh is done. I don't think he's done, but he has not lived up to the contract, of course. But he's never beaten Ohio State. He's 3-3 against Michigan State. It's not good enough. And even Reese Davis, the host of College Game Day, said, Michigan doesn't have an identity. They have no identity. And again, I don't know where to go at this point with Jim Harbaugh because they take on Wisconsin. And by the way, Wisconsin returns this week because they were off for 2 weeks due to COVID-19. It still remains to be seen if Graham Mertz is going to be playing. But, Wisconsin's 1-0. They're the 13th ranked team in the country. This is a prime opportunity for Michigan to bounce back and get a win, get back to 500. You're at home. It's a primetime game, so the pressure's going to be on. This is a ABC special. This is a Chris Fowler, Kirk Herbstreit special tonight with Wisconsin and Michigan. So what happens? I mean, can you go off and win this football game? And I can't really say solve all your problems, but can Michigan go out and win this football game? If they don't, and they're 1-3, then you might as well start the bus for Jim Harbaugh. Don't allow him. He ain't coming back next year if they're 1-3. Because frankly, folks, if Michigan's 1-3 with 3 straight losses to start the year, they have Rutgers next week. I'll tell you what, if they go to Piscataway and Rutgers scores a win over Michigan for the first time in 6 years, you could pretty much put the final nail in the coffin for Jim Harbaugh if he loses 2 more in a row. But then after that, he's got Penn State at home, always a tough game. Maryland's no joke this year, and that's at Michigan. But then they're at Ohio State. So their 4 of their last 5 games on the schedule are pretty difficult by the way they're playing this year. Now, if Michigan was as good as I thought they were going to be this year, and they would have been 3-0, I would have thought, okay, Wisconsin's a tough game. Boom, they probably wins. It's at home. They're at Rutgers. That's a win. Then they're home against Penn State. Very tough game. But again, they're at home. I'm going to give Michigan the edge, but it could be a loss. At home against Maryland, win. At Ohio State, probably a loss. So, in essence, 6-2, 7-1 this year, I thought for Michigan, maybe the only loss coming to Ohio State. That's literally the total opposite. Their only win right now is at Minnesota. So, again, there is Reese Davis might be right. There is no identity to this Michigan football team right now because they have gone down. And we dove into it last week where we had to mention, I can't really say the fall of Michigan under Harbaugh, but they saw their heights, 2 times, 2 separate occasions, 2016 and 2018. They had a road game against Ohio State, the final game of the year. They win. They go to the Big Ten title game. They likely win that Big Ten title game, and they go to the college football playoff. So that's been the difference for Jim Harbaugh in Michigan over his now 5+ years. He had 2 prime opportunities to beat Ohio State and essentially ride a wave to the college football playoff because the Big Ten West has not won the division. Mostly, it's Ohio State. It's Ohio State year in and year out. It was Penn State the one year, but they didn't make the playoff, but they had 2 losses. So when you look at it, they've shot themselves in the foot. The 2016 game is the one that always sticks out because they lost in overtime at Ohio State, and that's the game they should have had. And then 2018, they were in prime position again. They were a higher ranked team. I believe they were number 3, and Ohio State was 10. We talked about this last week, but they lose. What was it, 62-39? I mean, it was an atrocious football game. They were never in it. So, as far as the future for Jim Harbaugh, I don't think they're going to. If Michigan does get rid of him, they're not going to outwardly fire him because he's an alum. He's too beloved there as a player. He is one of their own. It's going to be one of those situations where they say, we have mutually decided to part ways. Michigan and Jim Harbaugh have mutually decided to part ways, and I get that. I mean, in essence, he was fired. But, I don't think that's going to happen after this year. I think he's going to have 1 more year because, again, he has 1 more year on the contract. Now, can they choose to extend him? Sure, they can, but I don't think they will. They're not going to engage in contract extension talks with Harbaugh unless he somehow wins 5 in a row to end the year, and he beats Ohio State. And again, that's not going to get him to the Big Ten championship game because they already lost to Indiana and they lost to Michigan State. So that right there, you have 2 conference losses. Both of those were within your own division. So unless you're going to be outwardly have a better record than those 2 teams and Ohio State, you're not making the Big Ten title game. But I think a respectable end of the season. Again, it's a COVID year, and this is what I was trying to explain to Rich on Wednesday. Was, Harbaugh is not done. Now, is he close to being done? I think he absolutely could be close to being done, but I think they're going to give him 2021 when they come back to a normal season next year. We hope, obviously. Hypothetically, as long as we have a normal college football season next year, you're going to see the 12-game schedules, and then you're going to see it fully play out with Harbaugh, Michigan, and the Big Ten, and every other college football team. And then I think that's where you can really judge Harbaugh's tenure is one more year. This year, a little wacky. Again, everyone's dealing with the same situations. I mean, other teams have less games than others just because they've had more COVID outbreaks or stuff along those lines. But again, I think a disappointing season for Harbaugh this year it's obviously not good. I mean, this is a team that I thought would go probably at least 7-1, if not shock the world and actually beat Ohio State this year and win the Big Ten. I thought on paper they were good enough to do that, but moving forward, let's just say they finish 5-3, right? All right, let's say they get a bounce back win tonight against Wisconsin. They beat Rutgers, beat Penn State, beat Maryland. Only lose to Ohio State again. I mean, they're going to lose to Ohio State, barring something unforeseen. Let's just say they're 5-3, but their 3 losses are those 2 to Michigan State and Indiana, and then you have the ending season or the season-ending loss to Ohio State. Okay, 5-3. Bowl games are wacky this year. I mean, there's no minimum requirement for a bowl game this year. There's less bowl games, but there's no 6-win minimum this year as everyone's playing truncated schedules. So they'll probably go to a bowl game. They'll play somebody from the Pac-12 or whoever. I don't care who they play, but if they end the season on a positive note where they finish 5-3, then go out, win a bowl game, finish 6-3, or they're 7-2 this year. And I mean, they're not going to win out because again, that would mean beating Ohio State. But let's just say that they finish 6-3 with a bowl game victory this year. He's not going anywhere, folks. Jim Harbaugh's not going anywhere. He won't get a contract extension, but you're going to let him play out that contract, coach out that contract, I should say, for next year. Then basically next year they're not going to outwardly tell Jim Harbaugh, but it's going to be one of those things where it's kind of understood that, if you don't win the Big Ten and beat Ohio State this year, or at the very least win the Big Ten, we don't. At this point, if I were Michigan next year, and let's just say Michigan next year, and everybody's playing a full 12 games next year, right? Full schedule, normal schedule. Let's just even say Michigan loses to Ohio State next year, but they have tiebreakers. They end up winning the Big Ten. At this point, if I were Michigan, I would just say, Jim, if you win the Big Ten next year, you're fine. We'll give you a contract extension. All right, you could stick around. You'll change the perception of the program, even if you lose to Ohio State. But if you win the Big Ten, that's fine. That's fine. But then again, you really can't rely on losing to Ohio State and still winning the Big Ten, because where's Ohio State going to lose? They're not going to have Justin Fields next year, but where are they going to lose? I'm sure there's going to be another quarterback in there that's going to be that I'm not thinking of it off the top of my head. That's going to be that's going to be nearly as good in Ryan Day's system. So it's not over for Jim Harbaugh just yet. It's close, but it's not over. He's got at least one more year in my mind. As far as the rest of college football, because now, I believe this has turned into a Michigan podcast almost. It's the Jim Harbaugh show every week because he just dominates the headlines. The top 4 coming into the week: Alabama 1, Notre Dame 2, Ohio State 3, Clemson 4. Ohio State's off. They're not going to move, I wouldn't think. Clemson's off. They're not going to move, I wouldn't think. But Alabama is also off because their game is postponed. So the only one in the top 4 that is in action is Notre Dame. If Notre Dame destroys Boston College, are they going to move up above Alabama? No, they won't. Alabama has been so dominant this year. Excuse me. Their only close game was the Ole Miss game. Ole Miss, they beat by 15 in that 63-48 shootout. And then 41-24 the next week over Georgia, but they thoroughly dominated them in the second half. Destroyed Tennessee, destroyed Mississippi State. Their game against LSU today was postponed due to COVID. So Alabama's staying at number 1, folks. I actually don't expect the top 4 to change at all. and it really stinks for the SEC because Florida top 16, they're number 6. They have the inside track on the SEC East now. They play tonight against Arkansas, so they'll have an opportunity to at least make some noise. Texas A&M, their game against Tennessee was postponed. So can I see Florida jumping Texas A&M? Not necessarily yet, just because Texas A&M is Florida's only loss this year. That was earlier in the year. It was kind of an upset loss then, and now Texas A&M has rolled through after that embarrassing loss to Alabama. They're 5-1, and Texas A&M is number 5 right now in the country. So I don't expect much movement at the top. BYU is boy, they're fantastic. BYU is so good. They're off. They're off though. They're number 8. They're off this week. They're back next week. They don't have a good. They really don't have that. They don't have that good of a schedule. They beat Boise State when Boise State was number 21, but as far as the rest of it, not too good. So I wouldn't expect BYU as an independent to make the playoff. Miami's in action tonight, so that will be, or excuse me, today. So that will be interesting to look at, and we're going to look at that game as well. My pick segment, they're taking on Virginia Tech, but Miami's an outside shot, folks. Miami is an outside shot. So again, we came into the week with a bunch of postponements. There's not going to be much movement, is where I'm getting at here. There really is not going to be, unless there's going to be upset losses. Like let's just say Miami loses or Notre Dame somehow loses. There's not going to be much movement in these rankings going into next week, and then you have to look at next week and see what the schedule is and determine, as long as games aren't postponed due to COVID, that things will be normal. Things will be normal next week. Teams that I think that can make a move could be Indiana, number 10 in the country. They're at Michigan State. Could they jump a team like Miami? If they're 4-0, could they jump BYU, who's off this week? I don't know. I don't think. Again, it's just going through that top 10. It's really tough to tell who's going to make a move. I think Wisconsin could probably make a move if they go on the road and beat Michigan. Again, Michigan will drop to 1-3 tonight if they lose to Wisconsin. While Wisconsin being 2-0 and coming back after 2 weeks off because of COVID, could they move up? Yeah, they could move up. Georgia already has 2 losses. They could jump them. They could jump Oregon, hypothetically. But again, there's not going to be much movement. There's just not too much going on this week. And the fact that, we've had too many games, even Coastal Carolina and Troy, that game had to get postponed yesterday. Again, you will not have that much movement in the top 25. And it's a shame because we are getting into the middle of November where we expect the movement to just go nuts. But in essence, the week leading up to this week in college football was all about Jim Harbaugh's job, Notre Dame jumping Clemson, and pretty much that's it. We're going to dive into the games next segment. It's bizarre to me how college football, and this is weird because we've seen a bunch of postponements this year. I was thinking about this earlier in the week. We've seen postponements all across the landscape, but this was the week for some reason where everything just had to go away. What did we do to the college football gods to have all of these positive COVID tests this week? I'll run down the top 25 games for you that are postponed. Number 1, Alabama at LSU. Number 3, Ohio State at Maryland. Number 5, Texas A&M at Tennessee. Number 12, Georgia at Missouri. Number 15, Coastal Carolina at Troy. Number 24, Auburn got back in at Mississippi State, game postponed. That was just the top 25. That was just the top 25. Other games. Real quick. So some of those are canceled, some of those are postponed. Like the Big Ten, you can't make that up. There's no wiggle room. Rice, Louisiana Tech, postponed. Memphis, Navy, postponed. Pittsburgh, Georgia Tech, postponed. Canceled here. Air Force, Wyoming. University of Louisiana, Monroe, Arkansas State, postponed. Just so much football was just taken away from us this week. And it really stinks. It really stinks, folks. All right, we're going to step aside and take a quick break. On the other side, we'll break down the games that are in action. And then later in the show, we'll go over my picks as well. Just remind you folks that you can follow me on Twitter at NickKosko59. Also follow our station at 1490 SportsBet. Follow us on Twitter. You can find me there, find our station there as well. Follow my guys, Harbor Jiu Jitsu on Instagram and Facebook. You can catch them inside the Attila's Gym in Egg Harbor Township. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays, and Saturdays. At the moment, new schedule coming out soon. I'm teasing a new schedule, folks. So if you want to get a good workout in or check out a great jiu-jitsu and MMA school, check out Harbor Jiu Jitsu, located inside the Attila's Gym in Egg Harbor Township. All right, we're going to step aside and take a quick break. As we mentioned, breaking down the games on the other side. Picks later in the show. It's College Football Pick'em right here on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio.
Betting college football? You've come to the right place. It's College Football Pick'em, presented by Harbor Jiu Jitsu on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio.
Welcome back inside the College Football Pick'em right here on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio, presented by Harbor Jiu Jitsu, located inside the Attila's Gym in Egg Harbor Township. I'm your host, Nick Kosko. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at NickKosko59. You can follow the station on Twitter as well at 1490 SportsBet. So we move along here during the program. Good day of college football. I know not too many games on today just because of all the postponements, particularly in the the SEC, and of course Ohio State being canceled today as well. Before we dive into some more of the games, I wanted to point this out because I found this intriguing as I was just searching for the Heisman odds. And it's a weird year for the Heisman, of course, because a lot of these contenders are playing different amounts of games. They started late. Justin Fields, for instance, for Ohio State, the quarterback, he's played 3 games so far. He's looked absolutely flawless, but he's not playing today. But now, just looking at some of these odds, little Vegas insider, the top contenders now are all at the same odds. You can get them all at the same odds now. And I found this really interesting. And again, the Heisman's pretty much become a quarterback award, which kind of stinks. But I'm looking at it now. Look at these odds, folks. We have 3 players at 7-4 odds right now. 7-4. You can get a plus 175. But 7-4 to win the Heisman. Justin Fields, quarterback Ohio State. Mac Jones, quarterback Alabama. Trevor Lawrence, quarterback Clemson. They're all the same now. I think Vegas is really telling us, you know what? These other guys are great. They'll make some noise. But guess what? These are the 3 that are, remember when the Heisman used to invite 5 guys to New York? I mean, who knows what they're going to do this year? They'll probably do it all virtual this year anyway. But they changed it. They moved down to 3 or even 4, so it depends on the year. Vegas is basically telling us it's these 3 guys, folks. Barring anything unforeseen, it's these 3 guys. So forget your Kyle Trasks, forget your Zach Wilsons, forget your Derek Kings, your Ian Books for quarterbacks. Forget them. Justin Fields, Mac Jones, Trevor Lawrence, those are your Heisman favorites. The favorites, yes, I would not rule out a guy like Kyle Trask from Florida. And now maybe that's just me being a Florida homer a little bit, but he's got 10-1 odds right now to win the Heisman. Now, again, it's basically just, take your pick between Fields, Jones, and Lawrence, but don't forget, Lawrence has missed 2 games in a row. Fields, he's played 3. He's only played 3 games. He's looked unbelievable. He's only played 3 games. Mac Jones for Alabama, very consistent. He's also off this week because the team is off due to a canceled game due to COVID. Kyle Trask hasn't really had a bad game at all. He's lighting it up, and I'll tell you this right now because they wait on the Heisman. I'll tell you right now, if Kyle Trask keeps his mojo running right here for Florida, right? And let's just say the Gators go on to upset Alabama in the SEC championship game, right? Let's just say that happens. Kyle Trask is going to win the Heisman, folks. Kyle Trask leads the Florida Gators to an SEC title, and he keeps this pace going. Don't forget, he has over 1,800 yards right now, 22 touchdowns, just 3 picks. His completion percentage is almost at 69%. He keeps that pace up, and they've played, 5 games? I'm just going to give you a rough estimate of the what he could finish with. They have, what, 1, 2, 3... They have 5 games left, right? Half their season's left. Because they rescheduled the game against LSU for December 12th. But who knows if they're going to play that now? Because that's a cross-divisional game. And that's the week before the title game anyway, so they might have to change that just based on division tiebreakers and whatnot. Maybe they gave Alabama LSU that game anyway, that weekend. But think of it this way. If Kyle Trask plays at the pace he's playing, he'll have over 3,600 yards, 44 touchdowns, and just 6 picks. And his completion percentage will lie between 67, 69, maybe even 70. Now again, Joe Burrow had an anomaly last year. And if people are going to measure everybody's quarterback season to a Joe Burrow from last year when he won the Heisman, I mean, Joe Burrow threw 5,700 yards, 60 touchdowns, and only 6 picks. But don't forget, he also did it in 15 total games last year. You know, he had the playoffs and a full season. Not to say he wasn't going to win the Heisman anyway, but that he finished the season with that in 15 games. Kyle Trask doing this in 10 games. Now imagine him doing that over. Imagine Kyle Trask doing that over 15 games. If you just project it out and measure it out the same, if Kyle Trask can throw 22 touchdowns per 5 games, let's just measure it out. 66 touchdowns, 9 picks, and 5,400 yards. Joe Burrow territory. And now again, I am projecting Kyle Trask's stats to be Joe Burrow-like if you extrapolate it over 15 games. And again, that's not the same as actually doing it, but that's the pace Kyle Trask is on. Why wouldn't you take a flyer on them 10-1 odds to win the Heisman? Because I personally believe Florida can go on a run. They will make the title game. It's just a matter of fact if they're going to beat Alabama or not. And if they beat Alabama, it's time to look at Kyle Trask as the Heisman winner. Over Fields, over Lawrence. We know the SEC is better than the ACC. You know, Lawrence can go off, have a great year, beat Notre Dame, they'll get back to the playoff. Great. Lawrence was probably on track to win the Heisman at first because he was tearing up. And he missed 2 games. And again, I know it was COVID. He only had mild symptoms. Arguably probably should have played against Notre Dame, but the ACC protocols suggest against that. Not suggest, they rule against that. So I get it. Alabama's played 6 games, right? Mac Jones actually has more passing yards than Kyle Trask, if you could believe that. But right now, Alabama only has 3 games left on the schedule. The game against LSU is postponed. We don't know if they're going to make that up. But through 6 games, here's Mac Jones. 2,100 yards, basically 2,200 yards. 16 touchdowns, 2 picks. 78.5% completion percentage. Now that's efficient. That's efficient quarterback play. We know the Heisman is for best player, right? It's supposed to be best player in the country. Now, best stats. Mac Jones is playing at a ridiculous level. He is making that offense go. But don't forget who he has on offense. And again, I can't take anything away from Mac Jones because nobody expected him to be this good in place of Tua this year. You know what I mean? But he has Najee Harris in the backfield. He has Devontae Smith and John Mechie at wide receiver. And he had Jalen Waddle before Jalen Waddle broke his foot. I mean, you want to talk about a loaded offense. Loaded offense. But that's Mac Jones. You give him a third of what he has right now. That's going to be roughly, what? He'll have 21 to 24 touchdowns in the next 3 games. Like, if he'll finish with that. Maybe 3 or 4 picks total. Let's just say if they play 3 more games before the title game, Mac Jones is going to have what? 21, 22 touchdown passes, 24. We'll give him 20. We'll be generous. We'll give him 24. 8 over the next 3 games. 1 or 2 picks. Let's say 20. So he'll have 24 touchdowns, 4 picks, and let's say 3,300 yards. It's a lot of yards, but let's just go 30. Let's just go 3,100. 900 more yards, so 300 yards a game. 3,100, 24 touchdowns, 4 picks. Completion percentage, obviously pushing 80%. Ridiculous. But you mean to tell me Kyle Trask is not playing better? Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm looking at the wrong thing here. But Kyle Trask is playing playing better. Sure, he has Kyle Pitts at tight end, but he didn't have Kyle Pitts for most of that game last week when Florida won, and they beat Georgia. Kyle Pitts is probably the best tight end in college football right now, and he didn't have, and Trask did not have him for most of that game against Georgia due to injury. You can't tell me Trask isn't playing at the highest level right now for any quarterback in the country. The way he's playing. Again, I know they lost. It hurts them. But it is a team game, remember? And this is an individual award. Let's not forget. But Kyle Trask to me, folks, I mean, if you get those odds right now, 10-1, plus 1,000. He's 4th, by the way. That's the 4th highest odds. Right behind him is Zach Wilson at BYU. Zach Wilson, by the way, nobody's talking about him, but the reason why Zach Wilson's not going to win the Heisman, and he's at 40-1 right now, I mean, he's had an absurd season, Zach Wilson, but he's not going to win the Heisman. Not even close, because he plays for BYU. Smaller school, independent, lack of a better term, crappy schedule. I mean, Zach Wilson's playing off the charts right now. He's completing 75% of his passes. He has 2,500 yards, 22 touchdowns, and just 2 picks. Don't forget, he has 158 rushing yards. Okay, but 8 rushing touchdowns. He has 30 total touchdowns right now in 8 games. Again, that's 8 games compared to Trask's 5, and Mac Jones' 6. And Trevor Lawrence, of course, has played, I think 5 or 6 games, and he's missed 2. Zach Wilson's not winning the Heisman. He'll get consideration, but he's not winning it because he plays for BYU and they have a crappy schedule. That's what it comes down to. And the guys after that, again, the Heisman's become a quarterback award unless a receiver or running back has an absolute bona fide year where it's historic. They're not winning the award anytime soon. Devontae Smith, Alabama. But see, this is what I mean, though. Devontae Smith and Najee Harris, 2 guys that play on the same offense as Mac Jones for Alabama. They are on this list, listed at 80-1 odds. I don't see any other Florida guys on here. Heck, Travis Etienne for Clemson, the running back for Clemson, he's on this list. He's on the list with 100-1 odds. Along with Lawrence, who's 7-4 right now. Right there, that should just cancel it out. You got guys that actually have odds to win the Heisman on the same team. Where's Kyle Trask's teammate on this list? Kyle Pitts was on here for the first 2 weeks because he scored 6 touchdowns in 2 games. Kyle Trask, to me, that's great value. 10-1, plus 1,000. Devontae Smith and Najee Harris are on here for Alabama. Tariq King, Miami, ridiculous year. But, again, he lost to Clemson. And he's not having the year that the other quarterbacks are having. He's a great dual-threat quarterback. He had a fantastic game against NC State. Don't get me wrong. But King's a long shot. Ian Book, not putting up guarding numbers for Notre Dame. Undefeated, number 2 in the country. Ian Book's not putting up gaudy stats. Kellen Mond, good season for Texas A&M. Shane Buechele, SMU quarterback, solid season. Spencer Rattler, I can't believe he still has odds. He's picked it up now, but Oklahoma has 2 losses, and Rattler's been very Jekyll and Hyde this year. But he still has odds to win, 100-1. It's mind-blowing to me. But Kyle Trask, folks, I'm telling you, 10-1, you better put your money down on that now before they start winning the rest of their games. Kyle Trask has the inside track to the Heisman Trophy if Florida wins the SEC. They beat Alabama, and they get to the college football playoff. Kyle Trask, baby. I'm telling you, Kyle Trask. I was high on him in the preseason. I was high on Florida in the preseason, even before COVID. I love Kyle Trask and the Florida Gators. I think they've done enough to bounce back from that loss to Texas A&M. And again, that's a good loss now. But Texas A&M, guess what? Is number 5 in the country. They're ahead of them. And lost 41-38 on the road. That's a good loss now. They had a game against LSU postponed. They dominated Mizzou, and they pretty much dominated Georgia. They took their foot off the gas in the second half, but they pretty much dominated Georgia, beating by 2 scores. They got Arkansas tonight. Arkansas, surprise SEC team. Florida's putting up 40 points and Trask tosses another 4 or 5 touchdowns. Folks, Kyle Trask, Heisman, 10-1 odds. Put your money down on that now. Look at the schedule coming up. You mean to tell me, and again, they've played the hard part of their schedule already, for the most part. Texas A&M, Georgia. Look at the remaining schedule, folks. And again, they have LSU for now. Who knows if the SEC changes that to Alabama LSU for division purposes later in the year, in December. Arkansas at home. Vanderbilt on the road. Kentucky at home. Tennessee on the road. You mean to tell me Florida's not going to be 8-1 going into the final week on December 12th? And even if they do play LSU, you think LSU's going to beat them this year? LSU just shelled themselves from last year. So you mean to tell me Florida's not going to be 9-1 going into the title game? And Kyle Trask is not going to have at least 40 touchdowns going into an SEC title game? Over 3,000 yards? And less than 10 picks? You're out of your mind. Kyle Trask, folks. Kyle Trask, folks, for the Heisman Trophy. I will die on this hill. Kyle Trask for Heisman. I'm telling you right now. 10-1 odds. Give it to me. And if you want to throw your money on somebody else, that's fine. Don't listen to me. Vegas tells you Fields, Jones, and Lawrence are the favorites now. That's fine. Fields is out this week. Now, my only worry now, actually, is Justin Fields. If we are going to break it down. I mentioned why Lawrence and Jones cancel each other out, because they have teammates on this list. And Lawrence has already missed 2 games. Jones is out this week. I mean, Fields is out this week too, but Fields only played 3 games. And he basically has 5 left, because we're going to include the Big Ten championship game. Justin Fields is playing at an absurd level. And I'll read off his stats for you in a second. Fields is my only worry. Fields to me is probably actually the favorite right now. But if you're going to predict what's happening down the line and how Fields is playing right now, and again, I'll use the word extrapolate. If you extrapolate that over the course of a season, over let's just say 8 games, because they're not getting the Maryland game back, obviously. I mean, Fields probably could win it in just 8 games, even before a Big Ten championship game. Fields, by the way, in 3 games, 908 yards, 86.7% completion percentage, 11 touchdowns, 0 picks. He's not really running the football much this year. He's at 57 rushing yards, but he's got 2 rushing touchdowns. 13 total touchdowns in 3 games. This guy is completing over 86% of his passes. Again, smaller sample size, but I mean, he's knocking on the door of 1,000 yards in 3 games. His college quarterback ratings are ridiculous, but 222.4. Justin Fields is my favorite right now, but that's just such great value on Kyle Trask, 10-1. Unless you want 7-4 odds on Justin Fields, who's the favorite right now. Again, I think Trask can bypass Jones and Lawrence very soon. And if he wins the SEC, he can win the Heisman. He will win the Heisman. Because he'll have a full range of a season over Justin Fields. He'll have more games over Justin Fields to do it. Is it a guarantee Trask wins the Heisman if Florida wins the SEC? No. Is it going to come down between him and Justin Fields at the end if he wins the SEC with Florida? Yes. I'm just telling you. Great value. And my only worry right now is Justin Fields. That's how I see that. That's how I see the Heisman Trophy breaking down through this point of the season. Watch out, folks. Here comes Kyle Trask, and I'm back on the Florida hype train. The SEC could get 2 teams in, Alabama and Florida. But it's going to depend on what happens with Clemson and Notre Dame, of course. Winner of the SEC is getting in, whether it's Florida or Alabama. And I think Kyle Trask is more than capable of doing it and getting him to the Heisman. All right, we're going to step aside and take one last break. On the other side, we are going to have picks, folks. My 5-pack of picks, 19-2 on the season. Let's try for that 5-0 week. We already had to get rid of one game due to COVID, which was canceled Friday, Coastal Carolina and Troy. So Rich is going to have to cross it off his list if he's tracking me, of course, today. So we'll dive into my 5 picks coming up next. Make sure to keep it locked here. It's College Football Pick'em right here on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio.
Now back to College Football Pick'em with Nick Kosko, presented by Harbor Jiu Jitsu on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio.
Welcome Welcome back to College Football Pick'em right here on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio. I'm your host, Nick Kosko. We are presented by Harbor Jiu Jitsu, located inside the Attila's Gym in Egg Harbor Township. Final segment of the show. It's time for the picks. 19, 19, and 2 on the season, folks. Trying to get better, but we are back to 500. We've made a slow and steady comeback all the way back to 500. We were 12, 16, and 2 at one point. It was not looking good. 6, 12, and 2, don't forget, a while back. We have made a steady climb. Since that 6, 12, and 2 start, we are 13, 7. 13 and 7 since then. It's pretty darn good over the last 4 weeks. We have made that money back for sure. All right, let's dive into it. First game on the docket, Miami at Virginia Tech. I just mentioned before in the last segment how good Derek King is in terms of the Heisman candidacy, outside looking in, but he engineered a great comeback over NC State in a shootout last week. But you know, King, I was always a big fan of him coming into the season after he transferred over from Houston, and he instantly made that team better. Miami, I'm saying, of course. But last week, he showed why he was so coveted on the transfer market. 430 yards through the air, 5 touchdowns. He was 31 of 41, and they had 105 yards on the ground as well. So King is absolutely fantastic for the Miami Hurricanes. And guess what, folks? They're number 9 in the country. They are plus 2.5 on the road against Virginia Tech. I don't care who Virginia Tech's played this year. You know, how in the world is Miami an underdog against this team? And when I saw that, I'm thinking to myself, well, Nick, you have to take this game, don't you? You just have to bet this game. You have to take Miami here, right? Correct. You absolutely have to. This is who Virginia Tech has beaten this year, folks. NC State, all right. Duke, ugh. They lost North Carolina in a shootout. Beat up Boston College, okay. It was at home, though. Lost to Wake Forest. They beat Louisville. Louisville is not what Louisville is vastly underperformed this year. They lost to Liberty last week. Granted, Liberty top 25 now, undefeated. Hugh Freeze got a contract extension over there. But guess what? Virginia Tech lost. Virginia Tech lost at home to Liberty. Lost. How in the world are they favored against Miami? I'll never know. Give me Miami plus 2.5. On the road at Virginia Tech. All right, we had Coastal Carolina minus 11 at Troy, but that game was postponed yesterday due to COVID concerns. So we are going to go over to TCU and West Virginia. Yes, those West Virginia Mountaineers. Now, as a Rutgers fan, I'm not a big fan of West Virginia back from the Big East days. And I'm also not a fan. Actually, I shouldn't even say but. I'm not a fan of Virginia. I'm not a fan of West Virginia this year either because they've burned us a couple times this year. I have to go back on the list. Let's go back 2 weeks ago. How about this? Yeah, we had Kansas State plus 4 on the road at West Virginia. West Virginia won that game by a lot. And we had a game against West Virginia earlier in the year. I'm trying to find it now. Yeah, we're going to go back to week 3. Here it is. Yeah, we had Baylor minus 3 at West Virginia. West Virginia has burned us twice this year. So, now you may be thinking, third time's the charm, going against West Virginia. We're going to go with West Virginia this week. They are a minus 3 favorite, 3-point favorite at home against TCU this week. And TCU just kind of all over the place. They're 3-3. I really don't know what to make of TCU. They've won 2 in a row, though. They beat Baylor and they beat Texas Tech back-to-back weeks, but there was a point where they lost to Kansas State and Oklahoma back-to-back weeks. I mean, again, TCU's kind of all over the place. West Virginia has a little something going now here. Jared Dage, I can't pronounce his name, of course. Over 2,000 yards on the year, 11 touchdowns. I mean, he's a pretty good quarterback for the Mountaineers, and I think he's ultimately going to lead West Virginia to a victory here today at noon, and they'll cover. Field goal game. I like the way he's playing. Again, Big 12, we know it's about offense for the most part. And at this point, I like West Virginia's offense a little bit more. So give me West Virginia minus 3 at home against TCU. Moving down the line, SMU Tulsa. Now you would think, Nick, well, isn't SMU going to be a huge favorite over Tulsa? Wrong. You are wrong, folks. Tulsa is minus 2.5. Now, granted, Tulsa's only loss this year is to Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State, all right, top 25, Big 12, good team. Tulsa's 3-1. Tulsa's only 3-1. They've had 3 games postponed this year. Here's Tulsa's schedule in 4 games. 16-7 loss to Oklahoma State on the road. All right, good game. Arkansas State postponed. They go on the road. At the time, number 11 Central Florida. They go out and upset them 34-26. All right, okay. Game against Cincinnati postponed. At South Florida 42-13. Okay. ECU 34-30 at home. Shaky. And then they had a game against Navy postponed. Tulsa can't stay on the field. I don't know what to make. And the fact that I don't know what to make of Tulsa and they are a favorite just kind of blows my mind. So this game later tonight is just fascinating. SMU is 7-1. Their only loss was they were blown out by Cincinnati, but Cincinnati is by far and away the best Group of 5 team this year. But SMU 7-1, the game experience on the road, plus 2.5. I think they're going outright. You got to give me SMU. Give me the Mustangs, plus 2.5 at Tulsa. Illinois at Rutgers. Yes, folks, we're going to my alma mater, Rutgers. They're coming back to the docket. We had them against Indiana. We had Indiana, though, the road, we had them as the road favorite, and we won that game. Rutgers almost got that crazy backdoor cover with laterals. But Rutgers showing a little something. As I explained to Rich, again, Rich wants to bust my chops and say, well, that win over Michigan State it felt like forever ago. Okay, sure, but that was only a couple weeks ago, Rich, first of all. Second of all, they've played pretty well, for the most part, against Indiana and Ohio State the last couple weeks. Now, if they can put a full game together, they might actually get their second win of the year, and they play, again, I have to mention, they play Illinois. They play Illinois today. Illinois stinks. Does Rutgers stink? Maybe they do stink, but Illinois stinks. Destroyed by Wisconsin opening weekend, 45-7. Lost to Purdue 31-24, and they got dominated by Minnesota. Minnesota didn't look any good this year, and they got dominated by Minnesota 41-14 in Illinois, in Champaign. So if my math serves me correct, Illinois has only scored 45 points in 3 games. Now, that seems like a Rutgers stat, doesn't it? Seems like a Rutgers stat. Here's Rutgers in 3 games. 27 points, 21 points, 27 points. So if my math's correct again, that's 54 plus 21. What's that, folks? 65. So by quick math, Rutgers has the scoring advantage. And they have an opportunistic defense. And you never know what's going to happen with special teams. We know Greg Schiano loves his defense and special teams. I mean, have you seen the Rutgers special teams lately? I mean, look at last week. Laterals upon laterals throwing across the field on Ohio State of all teams. And they scored a touchdown on a punt return one of those times. Rutgers is at home. They're a 6.5-point favorite. That's just under a touchdown, and that enticed me to take it, by the way. So give me Rutgers. Give me the Scarlet Knights. Give me my alma mater. This is the first time Rutgers is favored in a Big Ten game since 2014. And I believe it was when they played Indiana. And they got that win in 2014. Give me Rutgers. I don't know when they're going to be favored in a game at all again for the rest of the year. So give me the Scarlet Knights, minus 6.5 at home. All right, final game, Army against Tulane. Army plus 5.5 on the road. They're averaging over 200 yards a game on the ground. Just on the ground. And Tulane, again, this is another game where I'm surprised that, granted Tulane is at home, but that line. Actually, no. Look at that. The line shifted, folks, to 4.5. So we have to change that. We have to make note of that, folks. Don't forget, 4.5 now is the line, but we're still going to take Army plus 4.5. It's still within a field goal, and I believe Army's going to play ball control. They're 6-1 on the year. Tulane's 4-4, up and down on the year. Army looking pretty good. Only loss was to Cincinnati, and they lost 24-10. And Cincinnati, we know how good Cincinnati is this year, but if you can play ball control, Army has scored 49. They scored 49 points last week against Mercer. Okay, whatever. UT San Antonio, 28 points. Citadel, 14. So again, Army, the scoring varies here, but they play ball control, and I think Tulane is in for a rude awakening with that ball control. So let's give Army the edge here, plus 4.5. So quick recap of the picks here. Miami plus 2.5, West Virginia minus 3, SMU plus 2.5 at Tulsa, Rutgers minus 6.5 at home, and Army plus 4.5 at Tulane. Those are my 5 picks. Let's go 5-0 for the first time this season, folks. We'll come back next week, of course, hopefully in the green. Enjoy the college football today, folks. This has been College Football Pick'em. I'm Nick Kosko saying so long. We'll see you next week on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio.